I can see you.
Yay.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, you getting
Busy,
ready
but
for
good.
tomorrow?
Yeah, I think everything's pretty much all lined up, ready to rock and roll. So, yeah, I think we're good.
Are we gonna get a guest appearance of you walking in?
No, there will be no guest appearance of me as Lyle XOX. You will just
Yeah.
be getting the Lyle version.
Lyle version. Awesome.
Always a
Are
good
you there?
time.
Are you there right now?
No, I'm in my studio right now.
Oh, nice. Nice. What is it? Is that wow, that's awesome. Holy smokes. So you do a lot of your work in your studio? Is that how you kind of do?
Yeah, I mean it's all in here.
Yeah.
It's just me by myself, and there's about close to 3,000 square feet in here. So I have lots of room to spread out and do my thing. So
I love it. And is it just whatever's come to your mind oftentimes, or is it usually commissioned where it's like, Lyle, we need you to take this and create something with it, with your
no,
manager?
it's always like it's I do what I want to do. The commissions and the collaborations that I've worked with in the past, like I remember the very first one was with Gucci, and it really was like, okay, you do what you do. And I had originally requested to have like, because I only work with garbage and found objects and like recycled stuff, right? And people now from all over the world send me their garbage. But with Gucci, I'd requested to have garbage from them, and they said, well, we don't have garbage here. And I was like, well, I mean like scraps from their atelier,
Yeah.
etc. And so blah, blah, blah. Anyways, but yeah, no, the collaborations that I do, it's always like, we love what you're doing, you do you. And, there isn't really direction per se, unless they're like thinking about a particular color palette, for instance, that might be of interest to them at the time. But typically it's very like free run. And I prefer to work that way, because when it's too dictated, like this is what we want it to look like, there's no real creative freedom in that. And then you just feel like you're kind of filling out a prescription. And that for me doesn't really, there's no inspiration there then,
Sure.
So
I do a
yeah.
lot of abstract work on acrylic paint, just kind of a hobby. But when someone says, oh, can you paint me something? It never works out. I'm frustrated. It's not
Yeah,
fun.
no, I don't want to paint your cat. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. And for the listeners, Lyle, how did this all begin? I know you're from Weimar, Saskatchewan.
Yep. Thank you for doing your research.
Absolutely, you're right. Had to do a little bit. Couldn't come completely blindsided. Yeah. And obviously, you come from small town Saskatchewan, 150 people. To what you do today, I mean, that's a jump. Could you see yourself being that boy thinking about what you're doing today ever?
Oh God, no. I'd be totally lying to you, Zach, if I said that I had envisioned that, because living in that world, you don't know truly that this world exists even. It's not even on your radar. And, I didn't grow up in a time of like internet and all of that kind of stuff. So this is all prior to that. And so, I have this I waffle between being grateful and thankful for growing up where I came from, because it really forces you to think outside the box. It forces you to create your own world. And that's really what I had to do, was create in this imaginary kind of world in my head. That's how I lived. I mean, obviously you have the flip side of it, which is it's not necessarily the best of times. Growing up in rural Saskatchewan, being gay and feeling like an alien, and so I think that served many challenges for me. But so often people ask that of like, did you imagine yourself doing what you're doing now? And I have to say no, because I really didn't think that it was even possible.
No, for sure.
So
you posted something yesterday for International Women's Day, and it really hit home, because kind of what you had said is, the women in your life were a lot of the reasons you're a shield. It's been they've been your protectors. And it's very similar to me before I lost my mom. And, I have my sister and a lot of women around that have really been there for me. That hit home. What made you feel like you gravitated towards women, and that was kind of like this? You had this love and protection from them. That's like how I feel sometimes, being a black sheep. How do
Yeah.
you? How did you find your way? Because I'm sure there was moments where you said, "Well, I'm not fitting in quite exactly with everybody else."
Moments, or like basically my entire existence there was like, yeah, I don't fit in here. I grew up in a home where I'm incredibly thankful that my mom understood my creative nature, and she, as an artist herself, are like very artistic, and coming from an artistic background or family, I should say, she understood that she had this child that was creative. And so, I remember like having drawing lessons even before I went to kindergarten. So, my mom understood, like, I wanted to draw perspective. I remember I have told this story so many times, but it's really like a big moment for me, is that she noticed that I was taking my crayons and like poking them through the paper. And most parents, I think, would kind of look at that as a form of aggression, or, like, my child needs help with anger management. And my mom was like, no, Lyle is this kid that's wanting to make the house look like it's going into the paper. And so he doesn't know how to make it look like that. So she was like, let's sit down and I'm going to teach you how to draw perspective. So I was drawing the houses that I was drawing, and the package of lifesavers, for instance. I remember learning how to draw a package of lifesavers, also made me stand out in another way at school, because my pictures didn't look like the other kids' pictures. But in that moment, you really realize, like, looking back on it, that it's those like pivotal moments where you understand that someone like my mom just nurtured that creativity. I speak of my aunt. I have an aunt who is a brilliant artist, and she was one of those, like in every family, there's like the cool aunt or uncle, and she was like the cool aunt. And she lived, the life of a makeup artist and a fashion designer. And she, lived in Dubai and in London, and had a house in Greece. And like, she was just like one of those people that she would come to our small town, Saskatchewan. You'd think that, a celebrity had landed. Yeah. And I remember like her opening up her suitcases, and that was the first time I knew about like designer clothes and, Chanel makeup. Like, it was just all of this stuff that it was like a totally different existence. And so she was a huge, and continues to be a huge inspiration for me. But she saw who I was and my own nature, and also just poured into that. And so when I think of these important women in my life, both of them really stand out to me. And then in terms of just my educational world, going to school, I mean, it was really hard. It was challenging. And so over the years, you kind of develop a way to protect yourself. And because I didn't play hockey and I didn't do traditional sports, I couldn't really develop those like male friendships. And because I always felt, bullied by that gender, it didn't make me want to like have relationships with guys. Right. And so it was really about feeling safe, feeling comfortable in the company of women. So yesterday's post really is, I mean, it's totally speaking from my heart. I am so grateful for all of the women in my life, and continue to be, in my corner all the time. And they are my cheering squad, and their muses, their inspiration. And I'm forever grateful for them, for women. Yeah.
When you look at your younger self, that boy, what are some of the lessons you would say now to that younger boy, or that guy that's out there in small town or rural Alberta or Saskatchewan that might need a little bit of a lifting hand or support. I mean, everyone needs it, right? So
absolutely, everyone needs it. And I think that, I mean, I wish that I could have been able to be me and speak to the younger version of myself when I was growing up, and to understand that there are so many other people out there in the world, out in the universe, that are like-minded, and you will find your tribe in time. You have to believe that they are out there, and when you find your tribe, it's a really beautiful thing. There is this like kind of coming home experience that you feel. I also feel that as an artist, it's essential to find your creative voice, to stay true to your creative voice. And as that young kid who is developing their voice, to not second guess it, because other people around you might not understand it or might not get it. It might not resonate with other individuals, but that doesn't make it of less value. And so whatever genre that you happen to be into or pursuing, whether it be arts or sports or writing or whatever it is, that once you find something that you love and are attracted to, that you pour yourself into that and never second guess it. Because I think as an artist, you second guess yourself on a regular basis. You're constantly like, you go through the self-doubt, and you have, the amount of times that I've experienced that whole like imposter syndrome, it's crazy, right? So sometimes that never really like diminishes, but at the end of the day, I know that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing, and there's nothing else like it. It is my drug of choice. And it's the best high you can ever have. It really is. It's incredible.
How do you know this is a masterpiece? Don't need to add any more layers on. This is it. How do you know that? Is it a gut instinct? Is it a feeling?
Yeah. It is a feeling. It's a feeling. And when I'm making the sculptures, so much time gets put into pieces, and there's so many messages and stories that are embedded into the work that most people will never know or hear about. And I kind of like that there's a lot of these kind of secrets, I guess, encapsulated into the work. So I will work on multiple pieces, multiple sculptures at once. I kind of jump from one piece to the other piece. I think that, part of the reason why I do that is so that my mission is to never censor what's coming into my head, that I trust wholeheartedly that what is coming into my head as an idea is the right idea. And so I just have to constantly follow those instincts as I'm working. So if all of a sudden I'm working on something else or thinking about something else, I need to put that down and instantly do that, because I feel like that's also the best way to get the purest form of the work out, because you're not just making a note and like, I'm going to come back to that later, because when you come back to it later, it's never going to be in its purest form. And so that's why sometimes it feels kind of chaotic, where I'm like, oh, I need to like put this down. Suddenly I'm picking up something. And most of the time, to be very transparent with you, Zach, so often I look at my hands and it's kind of like this out of body experience where I don't even know what my hands are doing, literally. Oh, wow. Sometimes I'll notice that they're like just cutting or they're gluing or they're doing something, and it's happening so fast that you don't have time to really process or to think about it, to analyze it. You just allow it to happen. And then when you stop, you sit back and you're like, wow, that's so crazy that my hands just did that, but it's important to not censor it, or to start think like the train of thought that's like, oh, is this going to sell in the gallery? Or, is this going to be too out there for somebody to, hang on their walls, or whatever it is? As soon as you start having those thoughts, it takes you off of the path of the purest form of art, right? And so when you just do it because you know that that's what you're supposed to do, I believe, truly believe, that that's when you get the best kind of work, because it's just this, like,
from within, it's everything
pouring out. Yeah.
Is there moments where you draw it first and then you apply it to a sculpture, or do you automatically draw it and then put it onto yourself right away? Usually,
I never draw things out ever.
Oh wow.
It's always very organic. It's very in the moment. Like I said before, so people now from all over the world, they send boxes of like kind of curated garbage, junk, which I think is really beautiful, how the work is now creating this sense of community and relationships. And people, you have these kind of like pseudo relationships with people from around the world, because then when they see the finished product, they know that they gave that piece of, I don't know, whatever it is. And then they spot it and they're like, oh, I remember like getting rid of that old toothbrush or whatever it is. And it ended up in one of Lyle's sculptures. And they feel that kind of sense of connection to the work, which I really love. So,
and then Lyle, do you take the picture yourself after?
I do. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So they are all self-portraits. The thing is that it's interesting because, so my book came out in 2019 and the book won an international photography award, which I was like beyond, like I was over the moon, so ecstatic. And
congrats, by the way, on that.
Oh, thank you. But the thing is that I never think of myself as a photographer. The photograph is a way to capture the sculpture. It's a way to kind of create a souvenir of that experience or of that moment. That's what the photograph becomes for me. It's not that I think of myself as a photographer. So it's this weird kind of relationship with, like, I could sit down with an actual photographer and they would start talking about all this technical stuff and I'd be like, okay, you lost me. Like, I just don't.
Like, I don't know.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I know what I want it to look like. I know what the lighting needs to look like. I know how much contrast and, all that, all that stuff. I know what I want the picture to look like. But yeah, no, it's.
Do you have a hard time if there's other people in the room watching you create your masterpieces, or is it easier when no one's around? Then that's when you can flow.
So it's very rare that other people are in the room with me. The only times that I've done that is if I'm doing like a public appearance, in terms of, I've done artist talks and book signings and that kind of thing. I remember I think it was one of the first times I did a live transformation was in Paris, to a room of about 50 people. I was incredibly nervous, really, really nervous, because when you're applying a sculpture to you and putting on the makeup and all of that stuff, it is a very personal, very private moment. So to have people watch that, like, very intimate moment, was quite challenging. But since then I've done it, a few more times, and I'm quite particular as to like what venue or what, if it feels, comfortable or right. I've had some really amazing experiences doing it. So, but it's very rare where someone actually is in the room with me while I'm working. So yeah, like I have an assistant that comes in on days when I'm shooting. She's incredible. But she leaves me alone in the other room where I'm doing my makeup and applying everything. Excuse me. And there's great respect there. There's not like hovering over, like, oh, what are you doing now? Like, it's very much like, you do your thing. And when you need me, I'm here. So yeah.
What was one of the hardest pieces you've had to work with, or one of the most challenging pieces of clothing or items that you've had to work with?
I don't know if it's like a piece that's challenging, because I always gravitate towards pieces that I instantly feel inspired by. So it's not like I'm forced into choosing something. It's like the piece just kind of jumps out. I was like, I need to work with this. I think in terms of challenging, though, that there is a piece, because there were so many elements that were not only glued to my face, but are like on my head, etc. And the weight of it was really heavy, and a lot of the pieces were so delicate and so precarious that taking the photograph, it was very challenging, because you're trying to move and pose and get your head into the right position, but you also don't want anything to like fall off because it's very delicate. So it's, there's kind of this kind of like choreographed dance that's going on while you're trying to, get the right picture, so that nothing falls apart, because you want to be able to capture the fragility of the piece, but in doing that, you're also you're setting yourself up for, possible failure where the stuff can just start coming off, so, but I use very strong surgical adhesive glue on my skin, which takes a beating. And I think that over the years, it's taken quite a beating. But I can't imagine not doing that. Like, it's just part of the process. And so you just kind of know that your skin will suffer, and it is what it is.
How many pieces of art do you have out there now? Or how many
pieces?
Yeah, that you've done on yourself?
Oh my gosh. Probably like well over 300, I would say.
Wow. Holy, that's crazy.
I feel though, Zach, like I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel that as I'm getting older, I feel like life is going by so quickly. It's just flying by, and there's so many things that I want to do and want to accomplish in my life, that I feel that if I'm not working and not, focused on my goal, the time slips away too quickly, and then I will be filled with regret. And I really don't want to live a life that I've regretted that I haven't done it. So I just feel that in this moment, when I have my health, I have my mental faculties, or as good as they could possibly be. My hands are working, so I'm like, well, if I have all of this right now, I have to do this. I have to be able to be creating all the time. And when I'm not, I feel like I'm kind of letting myself down a bit.
It's so true though. Who knows what tomorrow holds for any of us? Our hands something can happen, right? A stroke, God forbid, nothing happens. But yeah, you gotta know those things. And I think you're right, as you get older, you start prioritizing your life and saying, what's important, what's not, what makes me tick, what keeps me going. And that's pretty cool to see that. Have you thought about doing a cast of your face and then putting something around it?
If you could see right now in my studio, I have multiple heads of Lyle that have been cast. So that's how I work now, actually, is on casts of my head. Because, once you have these molds done, as long as I'm not losing or gaining weight, and I try to keep that fairly consistent, but then the sculptures fit perfectly to my face. Obviously, there's other elements that are not part of sometimes it's done in pieces. A lot more often than not, it's done in actual pieces. But then there's so many of the little elements that are done as part of the makeup that are part of the underneath kind of layers. But yeah, without these forms, I think it would be really, because in the beginning I didn't have them. And so if you look at original work, you see the progression of the work over the years. you see how much detail and how much more sculptural the pieces are. Whereas in the beginning, it was very much, there was a big focus on the makeup element of it. The makeup was one of the leading factors in the transformation, whereas now makeup is just part of the journey, not the main mode of transportation.
No. When you say you want to get things done and life is short, what are some of the things, I know, when we're 80 years old, that you want to be proud of? Have you thought of those things that you want to be proud of?
When I'm 80 years old?
Yeah. Looking back at your life.
Yeah. I mean, I want to have been an artist that has inspired people to find their own creative voice. I want to know that when I leave the earth, that I've been someone that's truly loved people and has impacted people in a really positive way. I want to inspire people to be brave, and to live authentically. I think that's incredibly important. And then, of course, I want to have, I would love to be able to look back and see a retrospective of the work, and to know that the work is, in major galleries around the world and museums, and yeah, but I mean, I can't exclude those first few components that I've mentioned, because those are the most important at the end of the day. When I want to be able to look back at a successful life, those are the things that are truly the most important. I just feel lucky that I've found what I am passionate about doing, that I have the opportunity to be an artist and to create. And I want to be able to do as much as I can, and, work with other artists and do collaborations, and all of that. All of those things are so important to me on the professional level. But then you also have those other elements that when you're 80, looking back at your life, you want to make sure that that you've been that person that will be remembered down the road after you've left the planet, and for all the right reasons.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a thing. Definition of success. What does it really mean?
Yeah.
I saw this clip. I think it was on one of the news, or it was actually on one of the documentaries of yourself. And it was your mom and yourself looking at a storefront. And I could just see the emotions in her boy made it. He's done it, and it was so beautiful to see. What were those moments like in life? I saw Cher Follows You, and these little pivotal moments in your career. What has that been like, to elevate yourself yet still remain humble and non-egotistical and be true to who you really are?
I think that how do I say it? I think that as you live your life, and as you develop and understand who you are as a person, what your priorities in life are, how you've defined a moral compass, etc. If you abandon that on the course of your life, you do yourself a great disservice. And life is always going to present itself in very challenging ways. And I think that throughout the challenges, what makes it successful is knowing that you've risen above the challenge and maintained your own personal integrity. That will always be a mission of mine, to treat people with kindness, and, and show other people that they are valuable and worth something, And so that's always just kind of been part of my mantra, I guess, of how I live. In terms of those pivotal moments, I think that a friend of mine was recently saying, like, Lyle, I think that you need to just kind of stop every once in a while and kind of look back at what you've been able to accomplish. And I appreciated her words a lot in saying that, because she was like, as an outsider looking in, you literally are checking off one after the next off this bucket list. And as kind and as lovely as it is to hear that, so often, Zach, I find myself, it's like, that was great, cool, and now what's next? There's never really this like marinating in that, that moment, that feeling. It's like, that was super cool, I love that, now what's next? And so I think that a lesson that I'm trying to learn now is to be able to kind of sit in that moment for a little bit longer and truly appreciate the journey that has occurred to get you to that point. Because being an artist, it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
It requires incredible work. I know that some people have this idea of me kind of like prancing around in the studio, like gluing stuff to my face and like la-di-da, like, and it's couldn't be further from the truth, right? It's like, it's not at all like that. And so, so to be able to really focus on the task at hand and to just power through all of the challenges, etc., I think that's really, that's when the magic happens, So, I mean, I'm very grateful for all those milestone moments. The moment that you were talking about with my mom, that's at Bergdorf's, Bergdorf Goodman in New York. And I mean, that's the pinnacle of, of all retail experiences. It's the best. And when I was creating the book, the team in New York was like, well, Lyle, what? And the art director, Fabian Barron, who I remember he did Madonna's Sex book back in the day. Like, I mean, he's a legend, right? And he's done he's literally done everything. So the fact that he was part of that project just meant the world to me, right? So, but he said, how do you want the launch to go? And like, what does this look like to you? And I said, well, I really want to have windows at Bergdorf Goodman. That's what I want. I want to be able to have the launch party there, and I want to have the windows on Fifth Avenue. And he's like, okay, that's no problem. We can make that happen. And I was like, okay. And so, a few weeks later, when Linda Fargo is sending me a message from Bergdorf's and saying, we love your work, Lyle, and of course we'd love to like host the party, and yes, you can do the windows. I mean, it was like a dream come true, right? So for me to be able to have the ability to go and create work that was in the windows and to watch people walking by and yelling out your name and screaming like, we love you, Lyle XOX. Like it's those are moments that I will, you can't buy that. Right. And it was priceless. And I've said, in the past that I might not ever get married, but that was like the closest to a wedding day for me, because it was so special to have so many people that I love and care about come from all over the world to be there for that moment. And then to have also all these like random strangers just walking by on Fifth Avenue in New York and to experience that. So, I mean, like those are things that I have to learn now to kind of sit longer in that moment rather than just always being, what's next? But
it was super cool. I mean, you could have been with all your friends, which they were there, I'm sure, but you brought your mom. Like, that's amazing. Like, you did not forget mom, which I loved. I was like, that's boss.
I think if my mom hadn't have been able to be there, that would have been a little soul crushing for me. Yeah. And so to be able to have my mom and my aunt, like Sally, for both of them as sisters to be there to support me was like dream come true. It was amazing.
Have you gone back to your hometown?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was just there. I'm losing track of time, Zach. To be very honest, everything starts to like blend and like, I'm like, what day of the week is it? But I think that I was home a few months ago. My dad is currently going through like cancer. And so it's also kind of shining a light on the fact that I need to go home more often. So whenever I can, it's of paramount importance. And so I'm going home again in June. And yeah.
Super cool. Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the youngest of 4. Yeah.
And you're the only one that moved away?
No, we all live in different parts of, I mean, we're all kind of spread out. I have a sister in Toronto, and then I have 2 other siblings that are in Vernon area.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. This was awesome.
Of course. It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking lovely, like insightful questions. And yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll have to get together when I'm in Vancouver for sure. If you have time, I know you're busy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, depending on how long you're here, you can always, drop by the studio. I'd love to like show you around, and you can see it in person then. And if it works for you to be at the show tomorrow, that'd be great.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Lyle, for everything.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Keep on inspiring.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.